Hello BookTube, welcome back to my 2026 library tour. Today I'm going to start with Colin MacInnes and his London novels. So this is an omnibus that includes City of Spades, Absolute Beginners, and Mr. Love and Justice. So, over a decade ago, I watched the musical adaptation of Absolute Beginners, featuring David Bowie. And I really wanted to read the novel that the movie was loosely based on. And so I eventually picked up this omnibus edition, but I have never quite gotten on with the book version of Absolute Beginners. Perhaps this will be the year, or soon will be the time. The next batch of books are by Naguib Mahfouz. First up is the Cairo trilogy. I recently picked up all three from Powell's, starting with Palace Walk. That is weird. The novel is translated by William Maynard Hutchins and Olive E. Kinney from the Arabic. I also have Palace of Desire, which is translated by William Maynard Hutchins, Lauren M. Kinney, and Olive E. Kinney. And the final volume is Sugar Street, which is translated by William Maynard Hutchins and Angela Botros Saman, all from the Arabic. I'm hoping to get to the Cairo trilogy later this year. And I also picked up Nidak Ali by Naguib Mahfouz, translated from the Arabic by Trevor Legasic. So this is a novel about a street in Cairo and the colorful people who live there. I read this, I had this when I was a teenager and read it in my very early 20s. And then I got rid of it and regretted it, and a number of years ago I decided to re-add to my library a number of books by Nobel Prize winners that I had and gotten rid of, and this is one of those books. Next is Intimate Geography, Selected Poems 1991 to 2010 by Jennifer Myden. This is Australian poetry, and I picked this up one year for Aussie April when I read three works of Australian poetry. We've already seen the previous one with The Jaguar by Sarah Holland Batt. Surprisingly, this collection, what I remember from it is an extended period of poems about the American invasion of Iraq. But of the three that I read, it was number 3. The Natural by Bernard Malamud. This is a novel about baseball prodigy who his first dream for baseball stardom ended with a gunshot, and his second stint I think ends in scandal. I picked this up last year and was hoping to read it for personal project in August, and it didn't quite work out. So I'm hoping I can come back to the natural at some point in the future. Which means I have unfinished business with it. Next is the Le Mart d'Arthur by Sir Thomas Malory. This is probably the great Arthurian text. I've had this for a very long time, and I have not actually fully read it. It's something I would like to do at some point. Next is a book that needs a new copy, and that is The Complete Plays of Christopher Marlowe in a very, very beat up Penguin English library, so a precursor to Penguin Classics. So I've had this book for 19 years. It will be this fall 20 years. So I picked this up in San Francisco. I want to say one of the things about my time in San Francisco is that I picked up a lot of books. And this one I think came from a charity event that the graduate English students were putting on. And I picked this up along with, I want to say, the mass market version of Chimera by John Barth. And already at that point, this was very beaten up. And it's only gotten more beat up since it's entered into my possession. Not necessarily because I'm hard on my books, but because sometimes I'm not particularly great at putting bookcases together. And so sometimes my books will tend to want to slip off when I'm lining them up. And recently this one had a big tumble and fell onto the floor from the heights of a bookcase. So it's in need of replacement. Although I don't know necessarily if there is a more recent complete Christopher Marlowe. 100 Years of Solitude by Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Translated from the Spanish by Gregory Rabasa. So, classic work of Latin American literature. And Their Children After Them by Nicolas Mathieu. Translated from the French by William... It's on the cover. Okay, Rudamore. I couldn't quite read the cursive script. This won the Prix Goncourt, and is about a group of teenagers in the, I want to say it's in the very early 90s. Yeah. I had to go at this a few years ago and didn't get on with it, so I have some unfinished business with this novel. Next is the only Armistead Maupin that I have in my collection, Maybe the Moon. Armistead Maupin is most famous for his Tales of the City novel, which I have had the first 2 or 3, and I am thoroughly kicking myself that I don't have. I really need to correct that and add them back to my collection. So Maybe the Moon is like a separate novel. It's a standalone novel about an actress who is most famous for playing the character who's very similar to E.T. And her trying to get back into the film industry. And it deals with some of her relationships with other people, including the young man who played the human lead in the story. So I remember it quite fondly, although it has been, I think, since the 90s that I read it. I did get rid of that copy and eventually picked this one up to replace it. Um, Unusually Grand Ideas by James Davis May. I picked this up a few years ago from LSU during one of their sales, and it's a pretty good collection. I quite like it. Etudes by Friederike Mayrocker, translated from the German by Donna Stonecipher. This is a collection of prose poems that I have never gotten on with. I've tried it several times and I just haven't done it. So the next two are by James McBride. The Good Lord Bird, which is a historical novel about John Brown. Haven't gotten around to it yet. I picked it up last year? Or the year before. And then I also have The Heaven and Earth Grocery Store, which is a more recent novel of his. Next is Alice McDermott. I have two novels by her, starting with Charming Billy, which won the National Book Award when it came out. So this is a novel about grief and drama and interpersonal family relationships. So the Billy of the title dies at the beginning of the novel from the after effects of or the consequences of alcoholism. And the novel looks at various members of his family, most particularly a cousin who has had a very complex relationship with Billy, and it's quite good. I've read the novel a few times, and I've really enjoyed it every time I've read it. Also by Alice McDermott is Someone, which I haven't gotten around to yet. And I picked this up a few months ago. Next is Larry McMurtry, which won the Pulitzer Prize. This is probably the great Western. Lonesome Dove is about two ex-Texas Rangers who have gone into cattle ranching, and they decide at the beginning of the novel to move their operations from from the Rio Grande to Montana. So they go on a cross-country trek that doesn't quite go to plan or to satisfaction. I have tried to get into this novel at least twice, and it's never quite worked out for me. I know there's another big Lonesome Dove reading event coming up in June as part of Michael K. Vaughan's June on the Range, but I don't know if I'm going to try to join in on that because I have other things I want to do in June, so we shall see. But I do need to finish my business with this novel, and given it's a Western, it would be kind of most appropriate. So the next two are by Fernanda Melchor. First is Hurricane Season, which was shortlisted for the 2020 Booker International Prize, and it is translated from the Spanish by Sophie Hughes. So this is a novel set in a small Mexican village about the murder of a transgendered bruja and of the young man who murdered her, told through the perspectives of the people who knew him. His estranged sister, was it his aunt? I kind of get the relationships confused. I think it's the sister, but it might be like a younger aunt. And then his effective stepfather And then a young man who is the murderer's best friend and is in love with the young man. So yeah, when I read it several years ago, it was very harrowing, and it took some time to get used to how Melchior sort of structured the novel, but I enjoyed it. I'm not entirely sure why I've struggled so much with Paradise, though, which is a newer novel by her, also translated by Sophie Hughes. This is about two young men, one of whom is wealthier than the other, who basically do something horrible over the course of the novel. What that is, I've never stuck around long enough to find out. But maybe I will eventually read this novel and be able to tell you more. Okay, next is Moby Dick by Herman Melville, classic of American literature. It's about the obsessive pursuit of a whale. I have not read this. I picked this up last year when I was on a as part of my extended fiction, poetry, and drama kick. And the last book on this shelf is Bridled by Amy Meng, which won the Lena Miles Weaver Todd Prize for Poetry. So I've had this poetry collection for quite a while, and it's okay, but not one of my favorites. Although I haven't reread it in a while. So that was the fourth shelf of this middle bookcase of fiction, poetry, and drama. Tomorrow I will finish off this bookcase with the fifth shelf. So look forward to that. And then next week we will begin the final bookcase of not only fiction, poetry, and drama, but also of my 2026 library tour. So look forward to that, and I will see you tomorrow morning. So until then, BookTube, thank you and have a great day.